Hello and welcome back to the Fairbanks Year-Round Podcast. I am your host, Blake Schreckeis. I work for the Summit Realty Group as a wonderful agent, the best you might say, in the whole wide area. So reach out to me if you need me. But this is your special bonus episode. If you did not listen to the last episode, I have missed a week and I feel guilty and I want to catch up. So at least I have the same number of podcasts that I should have recorded this year when I look back and say, hey, I didn't miss any, even though I did technically miss last Tuesday. So again, I apologize for that. So we were talking about the seasonalities of selling last time. I want to kind of continue that on into pricing. So pricing your home is one of the most important things you can do to sell your home. And I say this a lot. So I want to pause and tell you guys what my top 3 items are to get your house sold. Pricing is one. I don't know the order. I've kind of gone round and round because you do need all 3. Because you can't, they're like a 3-legged stool. You can't, if you price something right without marketing, which is your next one, and nobody knows about it, then it doesn't matter as much. So you need really great pricing, and we're going to talk more about that. You need really great marketing, which I'm going to include like photography and things in that, because anybody listening who's thinking, oh, I'm going to miss something. The third one is your communication. So your communication is with me as a real estate agent with my clients. It's also with the other agents. It's their agents with their client. Like if we don't have good communication, a deal does not go very well. And getting into the house, setting things up, all this stuff doesn't really work as well. So that's kind of usually the last thing people think about, but I do think it's really important. So those 3 legs are the stools upon which we stand. I know a few weeks ago I did talk about the marketing of your house, what actually helps sell your house, and what agents tell you. Some agents, not all agents, tell you sells their house, which may not actually do that. So the big thing nowadays is basically online. Photos are a huge deal because that is now become the first time people are seeing your houses through the photos. It's not by driving by the yard sign anymore and having the curb appeal. I think photos are the new curb appeal. Curb appeal is still important, But anyways, so let's get to pricing. It's very simple in concept, but it's really hard to pull off. I don't want to say really hard. It takes expertise to pull this off, and it takes expertise to explain to sellers each time how something like pricing works. Because when you're selling a house, the average person buys, I think it's 3 to 5 homes, buys and sells 3 to 5 homes in their lifetime, 3 to 5 homes. So I average anywhere from about 30 to 36 transactions a year. So I am doing around that amount every 1 to 2 months. And I say that not to toot my own horn, although I will say the national average is 12 transactions a year. So I've tripled the average there. Sounds pretty great, doesn't it? But anyways, I say that to say that this is obviously what I do. And I'm not saying that sellers don't know anything and you should just trust me implicitly, because that is not true. You should be doing your own research and you should be asking questions, and your agent should have rational answers that explain it. What I am saying is that I do have way more experience than the average home seller, and I've thought about this a lot more. So it can be hard to construe it, but that's one of my biggest jobs, is to construe how this pricing works. So first off, I'm going to start with the basis is the faster your home sells, the more it will sell for. And this is based off a study from the NAR, which is, they do the biggest study. I wish it was like a third party, because I hate saying the NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, because a lot of people look at it and they don't trust it because they're like, oh, of course a realtor would say this. And of course that's what their study shows. But it is the biggest and best study about a lot of these items, like marketing, how people find their agent or how people find their house they're going to buy. All these things, they do these big studies each year. And I don't know of anyone that's better. I would be open to hearing of a better study, of course. But anyways, the faster your home sells, the more it will sell for. And why is that? And that is because a common truth that we as agents all know, or we should know, listing agents as well, is the first 2 weeks that your house is listed is really, really important. And it is because that is when you're getting the most eyes, is when people are seeing the house. And so if you have it priced correctly, you'll get the best offer at that time. So even with the best marketing, If you are in for 3 months on the market and you have great marketing starting at the 3-month mark, let's say it was kind of bad marketing at the beginning, you can very well have a bad outcome. I don't want to say bad, but you could have a reduced price because maybe the people that first saw your house and decided no on it have moved on. Maybe they see it again, but their mind has already told them no. So how do we capitalize on these first 2 weeks? Again, it's through those 3 legs of the stool: the pricing, the marketing, and the communication. So on the pricing side, you have to have it priced appropriately. And we're going to talk how that happens to get those offers. If you price too high, we're going to start with the negatives. If you price too high, you will stay on the market. Buyers, if you're a little bit too high, buyers may still come see your house, but they won't want to offend you, so they won't write an offer. So you may still have showings. If you go way too high, you won't even get the showings because they're like, it's out of their price range maybe, and it's not even in their search results. Because the way most people are finding their houses is by setting parameters. I do this with all of my clients where I have an auto search that sets up like, hey, they're looking up to this price range. They need this many bedrooms, bathrooms. They want this area. And we whittle things down so they're not getting things that won't meet their needs. So when a seller, or when you as a seller think, well, I'll just price it high and then they can negotiate, you may be pushing it out of their price range where they're not even seeing your listing, the person that's actually going to buy your house. And then the next price point up where people are seeing your listing, they're very well educated because they're looking every day in a lot of cases. Buyers are. They're seeing you grouped with houses that are in better condition, maybe they're bigger, and they're uninterested in yours. This is if you're way overpriced. So you're going to have no showings. You're obviously going to have no offers. And then, of course, when you price it right, you get showings, you get offers. We'll talk about the other side. If you underprice it, it's a little bit tough to do that these days, but you could leave money on the table. If you underprice it, you will have a bunch of showings. You will probably have way too many offers. I think a sweet spot, if I was to just choose, would be about 3 offers. So you could play them off of each other and leverage that. But if you get like 16, 20, 30 offers, it can be a little overwhelming. And that sounds really great. But I've literally had, no, this wasn't my client. I'm sorry. This was down south. We had one I think there was 106 offers or something came through on a house. This was a bigger area. But 106 offers. After like the first 30, the seller said, I do not care what's in the offer. I will look at no more. These first, then 30 is too much, to be honest. So was that just a perfect house, or did that agent underprice that one? I can't remember all the circumstances on it, but it was, anyways, you could leave money on the table. People could bid it up to exactly the right price. It's that one's underpricing is not always my go-to because some things do take time on market to get enough buyers. If you underprice, maybe a few people will snatch it up right at the beginning, and you feel like you got an okay deal. So how we price, and then we'll talk about how we get to a perfect price. We have to, before it hits the market, it's like looking into a crystal ball. You look in this crystal ball and you say, I believe the buyers will be willing to pay this much. Now, we do have to educate ourselves on this crystal ball. We're not just guessing. So the way we educate ourselves is by looking at comparable homes that have sold recently close to your home. That's a lot of words. Comparable just means a house that is similar to yours. If we could find your exact house that sold 2 weeks ago and it was just carbon copy, it'd be like, this is a wonderful comp. And let's say there was 3 of them. That's usually the number we go for, 3 comparables that all sold, and we can be like, hey, this is so easy. And there's like only one neighborhood I know that you can do that in, and that is the Walden Homes or Walden Estates, which are the HOA, the condos out there on the northish side of town. They all have some very similar floor plans. It's so easy to price those suckers because you can look back and you can say, hey, these 3 exact same floor plans, maybe you have to vary the condition a little bit. They're all in the same location, same neighborhood. And in big cities, this is common, but we only have like one spot that can do that. All of these have sold for whatever, $225. And price went over the winter, and that's what it was. They have gone up since then, by the way, but $225. So it's really easy to price those houses and kind of see what's going on. But anyways, we find those comparable homes that have sold, not that have listed, and we'll talk about this, not that are pending, not that have expired, because I had sellers bring up, well, this one just listed for this much. It's like, well, that could mean something, but it could mean nothing as well. So we will look at those for a different thing, but the most important ones are the solds. And we're going to adjust those comparables because, again, they're not going to be perfect. They may be a little bit smaller in square footage. They may be a little bigger. They may have an extra bedroom or a half bath instead of a full bath situation going on. So we have to adjust the pricing so that the comparables become as similar to your home as possible. We say, okay, so if this house had 200 extra square foot, extra half bath, we would have to raise the price up a little bit to make it similar to yours without getting too much in the details there. But we make these adjustments and then we say, okay, so your house should sell for about this amount. That's not the whole story because we have other issues that are coming into play. So the next thing we do look at is the active listings. Now, this is when we're about to go on market. I do it beforehand, but right before we go on market, we want to look at the active listings and see what's available because that's where we want to pinpoint the list price. So your sales price and your list price, I used to believe when I first started that these should be the same exact thing. If it's going to sell for $100,000, nothing sells for $100,000 up here. But if it's going to sell for $100,000, you should list it at $100,000. And it's not the way I look at it nowadays. So we look at the listing side and we say, hey, here's what's active. Here's the comparable homes, again, of what is available. And then we also look at the pendings. Say, okay, these were available. We don't know what they've closed for yet because we can't divulge that until it's officially closed. But we know they went pending. We know how long it took for them to go pending, how many days on market. That's another thing that we're looking for, not just pricing. We're looking for days on market throughout this whole thing. We're saying, hey, this is the expected time that we're going to have you on market. So you guys can have a plan for your timeline. And of course, we're not surprised by anything. If we price this and, these days nothing lasts that long, but when I first started, I was very much in a buyer's market and things were on market for 3 to 4 months. And having that expectation up front is super helpful because it's like, oh, I want this to sell tomorrow. It's like, hey, listen, we can probably get you this price, but by what we're looking on these comps, things are taking 95 days to sell. Is that going to work for you? And if they say, no, it's not going to work for me, it's like, all right, well, let's lower the price. So someone's going to get a deal, but you're going to sell faster. So if that's more important to you, that may be the way to go. We're not in that market now where things are selling if they're priced well, usually within a couple weeks, depending on the price range. Again, there's a bunch of stuff going on there. So we then look at what's active. So we know what it'll probably sell for. We look at what is active and where we want to get that list price from. But then we have to take this overlay on all of that. So I know this is getting kind of complicated, But we look at what's called an absorption rate analysis. And the absorption rate, this is fun, isn't it? The absorption rate, and this is why you should hire an agent. You don't actually have to know this, but if you're curious, the absorption rate is if nobody listed any more houses, how long it would take for all the active listings to be gone off of the market. So what a healthy, and this is how they decide, and it's a little bit arbitrary, but it's what makes sense. But this is how a buyer's versus seller's market versus a balanced market is decided. And if you don't know what that is, a seller's market means it's really good for sellers because there's way more demand than there is supply. If it's a buyer's market, it's really helpful for the buyers because there's a bunch of supply, which is houses, but there's not enough buyers to buy them. So sellers are reducing price, blah, blah, blah. Balanced is about even there. And the balanced is the healthiest market. That's what we would all like to have. We've not had a balanced market in a really long time, maybe for a short stints. So you look at, I was just pricing a house in the 400 to 450 range the other day. So this is on the top of my head. It had absorption rate of 1.2 months. Now, a balanced market would be 6 months of inventory. So 1.2 months means it would sell really fast, which means it would be a very heavy seller's market in that price range, in that market that I was pricing that house. If it had a 9-month inventory, be like, oh, this is a buyer's market. We have so much inventory and just not enough buyers. So we take that overlay too, and we look at the pricings. We look at things that have sold. We even look how far back they sold. It's like, hey, that thing sold in the winter time and things sat for a little bit longer this winter. So we maybe need to adjust the price up for what we think the sold price is going to be because it's just a ton of variables that go into this. So we take all of these, and again, it's a bit like looking at a crystal ball because we don't know for sure, but we're giving our best educated guess. It's this science and this art. We're bringing all these numbers together. And if it didn't matter, we could just say, oh, we'll just start wherever and we'll lower the price until we figure it out. But again, those first 2 weeks are so important. It's worth doing this effort. So that's where like this crux comes up where it's like, hey, yes, we are guessing. And I'll get to a point where we're no longer guessing. I'll explain how that happens. But we're guessing right now, and we have to guess, and we have to do the best we can because it's going to make a difference in your back pocket at the end of this thing. So we do our very, very best. So a lot of people forget that we don't pick the selling price. So I was just saying, hey, this is where I found what the sold price could be. So I have a range for that. The market decides always. always the market decides what it'll sell for. We can decide what it lists for, and really it's up to the seller what we list for. I do have limits on overlisting things way too high because it just can be a big waste of time. But generally, I will give all the information I have, and then just like anything, you are my client, but I am serving you. I have a fiduciary duty to you. And so if you want to list it a little bit higher with all the information I've given you saying that we should list it lower, and you want to give it a shot for whatever reason, I am willing to do those things within reason. But again, I would, if it was me, I'd listen to me because again, I do put a lot of effort and time into finding that right price because I do think it's so very important to have that right off the get-go. So we don't decide the price. We get to decide the listing price. We don't get to decide what it sells for. The market will decide that. But we're going to get all the other pieces in place, such as the marketing, such as the communication, and again, hopefully such as the premier pricing to get you the most as possible to push that upper limit of what you can net, because it does vary based on what you do. And this is also true, I always bring this up, but for sale by owners who generally have less experience in pricing, marketing, and their communication can be a little, I shouldn't say, it just depends. But in general, I've called some for sale by owners trying to get showings for clients and things, and maybe I don't hear back for days on a time, so communication can be lacking there. So those things, they have less experience, and they don't know exactly how it affects them. Again, the average for sale by owner will sell for 6% less than a comparable home listed by an agent. So take that as you will. It's usually because you do have this sold price range that this thing is going to sell for. And if we can maximize all of these inputs to get to the top end of that range, that's what I'm here for. And to make it easier for you. Like, I want you to have a smooth transaction as easy as possible. Selling a house is work, no matter what though. But I can take a lot of that off your plate, and I can push that price up generally on average by 6%, which is nice, isn't that? To get a little bit more money. And a lot of times that's going to cover your fee. I always got to say commissions are negotiable, so it's going to depend who you hire, what that fee is. So anyways, the pricing is very important. That's how we come to the pricing. So now we look at all of this, we take it all into consideration. And my go-to is to say, hey, we know what the sold is. We know what the actives are kind of selling for. We know what the absorption rate is. We know we're going to have a bunch of attention on this. So I want to nestle you in the active market in the best spot to get you the most attention. And that is when you get a little bit of a deal for the buyer. That's what it looks like. They're getting a little bit of a deal, I should say. So if you have a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car garage, and just to keep the numbers round, everybody's listing their house right around 100,000. So you have one that's at 100, you have one that's 105, and you come in and you say, okay, we're going to list this as 97,500 or whatever. I'm just picking a number. Or we can go just a hair under. It's like, hey, these other two houses are very similar to ours. If we're being realistic, we're going to be a little bit cheaper because buyers are educated to the hilt. So as much as I educate myself on pricing things when I'm looking at your house, buyers are only looking in their specified range, and they're studying it for months and months. So they're very good. People don't realize they're very good at knowing what's overpriced and not. And I found this out with my wife when we're shopping for homes. She would say, hey, this should sell for that. I would look at it. I'd even run numbers and do my whole thing and be like, man, she's like dead on. And the reason is because she's looking for 3-bed, 2-baths, 2-car garages in North Pole in these specific neighborhoods. And she's seen everything for 6 months, and she's seen the price per square foot. She sees how long they stay on market. She's keeping tabs on it. Not every buyer, but a lot of buyers do this. They get obsessive with it. So they may not be masters of the market. They may not be masters of pricing and all the different things, but of their particular segment that they're looking at, they're real good at it. So they look at your house and they think they can get a deal. And this is when you get that excitement. And there's a lot of other things to push your pricing up, and we'll talk about those. But this is when you get the excitement. This is hopefully at this juncture, this is still possible. This didn't always used to be the goal, but we can get multiple offers and we can push things up and we can leverage them off of each other. Again, my goal is 2 to 3 offers would be great. I don't want 6 or 7 because it really does get confusing. I do have ways of simplifying offers so we can look at them, look at your net sheet, and look at all the terms in a very simplified way as much as possible. But at the end of the day, we'd have to look at the whole offer, and things start getting willy wampus because you're like, oh, well, that guy was paying for fuel. That guy wants us to leave the fuel for free. This guy has a $5,000 credit. That guy doesn't. We got to think about appraisal. This is going too high or too low. So there's a bunch of variables in play. And again, that's what I'm there for, to kind of like straighten those things out and keep them clear for you. So how can you, if you're unhappy with your pricing, what can you do? So let's back up. Before then, you have 3 agents coming to look at your house to list your house for sale. And I always recommend you have more than one agent. So most people will use the first agent they meet to sell their house, which is no criteria to sell your house. I like being the first agent you meet and not having to compete. But I know my worth and I know I'm good at what I do. So in fact, on all my listing appointments, I even bring along questionnaires, blank questionnaires, and I give them to the sellers and say, hey, listen, I think it's a good idea for you and your best interest to interview agents and find the best fit for you. I hope that I'm that best fit, of course, but here's a questionnaire, because a lot of people don't know what questions to ask that are actually important. Here's a questionnaire of things you could ask another agent. So let's say you have multiple agents and you are working on the pricing, and you have one agent, we'll say Blake, comes in and he explains in a much more succinct. I don't usually go this deep, just so you know. I don't take 45 minutes talking about how we come to this price, but I wanted to be very clear on this podcast. It's a longer format, and this is a nice time to talk about it. So we come in and I say, hey, here's how I reached my price. Here's how I think you should list this thing, and it's well researched and it makes a lot of sense. And you think to yourself, that's a little too low. He's saying 100,000. I was really wanting 115. The next agent comes in and says, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. You say, hey, what do you think we should sell this for? And they say, well, what do you think we should sell it for? And he's like, I really want 115. He's like, that sounds like a good number to me. Let's do it. And that agent may think that's a good number. They may not think that's a good number, whatever. Maybe they're right and I'm wrong. However, what I want you to be wary of is, again, you don't pick the market price. You only pick the list price. So you want to have a really good listing price. So even if they give you the number that you want, ask them to see show their work to see if they are correct, and you can compare it with the guy who is lower. Because I want you to sell your house for as much as possible. But I have missed out on listings where someone just comes in and says, hey, we'll sell it. We'll just list it way higher. And it makes the seller feel good, but will they end up netting more in their pocket? Probably not. Again, just like the thing I said before, the first 2 weeks are so important. So a lot of these agents are really good at getting price reductions, which I fancy myself pretty good at them as well. If necessary, but they come in high and they say, yeah, whatever, I got 6 months to sell this thing. I'm going to list this thing, and then I'm going to grind that price down to where it should be, back down to the 100, let's say, if that was the appropriate price. And then we'll get it sold, but you'll sell it for even less, because now people see you have 35 days on market. You've reduced the price 3 times. And they think, oh, how come this thing hasn't sold? As opposed to everyone's showing it. Hey, your agent asks, are there any offers on the table? And you say, yeah. We do have one right now, and we have another one who's asking, probably going to write in. And so they get this excitement built up, as opposed to 3 months later when it's like, nope, it's been listed for 3 months. I think we got the price right now. And they're like, okay, well, we'll take 2 days and think about it, and we'll write you an offer. And the seller has been listed for 3 months. It's like, oh, I guess this is the best we're going to get. So that's what that looks like sometimes. But if you want that higher price, there are ways. There are always ways. You have some things you can't change. The location of your house, you can't change. It is where it is. The only way you can change that is when you buy it. Buy a house in a great location. That's always the goal. Even if the house isn't great, always be looking out for location, because that is the easiest thing to sell. It's so much easier. Even with a cruddy house or whatever, if you have a great location, it overcomes a lot of bills. So you can't change that, but just so you're aware of it, you do have other ways. Condition is a big thing. So just recently, again, had a seller I was talking with. He's like, I was really wanting more. It's like, hey, well, let's talk about a few things. You got some items that are outdated in your house here. If you update those, it will push your price up, because I had to adjust your price down, taking those into consideration. Because when buyers come into a house, they look at the house, obviously, and they think to themselves, I have to change this. Maybe this is going to cost this much money. And even if they're not thinking the specifics, they're thinking this is just not the house that I want to be in, and even if it would be the house they want to be in, if they got some things fixed up. Another way is waiting for the market. This is not the choice way, because most people, when they sell, they have to sell. They don't maybe have to, but this is what they want to do to move forward. So the market generally is going up and to the right. So prices will raise up. So some people, you have a $300,000 house, and you say, I would sell if it went for $500. It's like, all right, well, we probably shouldn't list with a 6-month listing contract right now because the odds of us getting this, whatever that is, 66% increase in price in the next 6 months are pretty low. So what you want right now is unrealistic. It may be worth 500 someday, kind of thing. But the biggest way is that force equity, and that is increasing the condition. There's a bunch of other minor things, and again, it's usually related back to condition, but like cleaning. So I have the 3 things you should do: deep clean, declutter, depersonalize. Wait. I forgot one of them. That's 3 Ds. We're going to count that, but I think there's one more in there that maybe will come to me. Gosh, I should have had better notes. I do have notes, but anyways, that wasn't one of them. That just came out of the left field there. So you can increase your condition to increase your price within reason. And let's just go into it. There are things you can do that will give you more money than it costs on the repairs or increases, but that is not every single time. If you add a pool in Alaska, it's going to cost more for the pool than the value you're going to increase. Most people don't have pools here, but that was a very common one down south where they'd add a pool, and all the pool installers, because they're selling pools, would say, hey, you're going to get this money back and maybe even more when you go to sell it. So it's basically a free pool. Like you're just adding so much equity to your house. There's really no downside. It's like, that's not usually the case. Maybe it could be in some specific scenario, but it's like, no, it costs you $60,000 to put a pool in. Maybe it raises your price by 20 or 30,000, or maybe more. I'm just pulling numbers, of course, out of there. So anyways, I think I've gone on long enough about that. Pricing is very important. How you get to pricing, I give you the general overlay of how we accomplish that. And again, you don't choose the price. That's the kind of the biggest thing. You don't choose a price it sells for. You only choose a price it lists for. So let's list it appropriately, because the faster you sell, the more money you'll make and the better you will net. So those are kind of the overarching goals. If you just remember that, like, we are shooting to get it sold fast. And if you're not in a hurry to sell, you may say, well, I can wait around. If you're okay, you can wait around, but you can also be leaving money on the table. So it may not be something you want to wait around for. Maybe you want to wait around to list and list it appropriately then, instead of listing it and then not hoping it doesn't sell for 3 months. Like, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because I think you'll just net less into your pocket. And that is really, for sellers, the main goal is to get as much in their pocket as possible, and hopefully as smooth as possible without a huge headache. So again, as I always say, I'm with the Summit Realty Group here. I sell locally, Fairbanks, North Pole, the whole borough. If you've got a house that you want to sell, or if you want to buy a house, I am happy to help you out. Please reach out anytime. Of course, my number is 907-651-8356. You can call or text anytime. My email is blake@akblake.com. And this has been a great advertising series for myself. Don't worry, we are going to be getting back to guests and more about Fairbanks in general, but I do want you to know some things about houses as well, because it's what I do. It's my expertise, so I thought I would share those with you. Hopefully they are very helpful. Alrighty, I will see you on the next one. And again, I'm recording 3. I'm batching this sucker out because I have to catch up. So you're going to see one more podcast. That's going to be another solo podcast. I'm going to be wearing the same shirt, and I'm going to look just this good, but you can decide how good that is or how bad that is. But I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.